Welcome to the Korean Film Week online. Welcome to Korean Film Week 2021. It's online again, unfortunately, due to COVID. And we're having both the film screen online and this discussion is taking place online. And we're just hoping that next year we can do this all in person. Today, joining me in this conversation are three more wonderful people. First one is Alexandra Schiefert, a lecturer from the University of Vienna. And we have Rosemary, Libby, a student of the University of Vienna. Igor Harb, who is a translator and a film critic from Slovenia. And myself, I'm also a film critic from Slovenia. We will be talking about the program that is organized by the cultural department of the Embassy of the Republic of Korea from Vienna, Austria. And it's K-comedy. So we will talk about the 4 films in the program. And another thing to point out is that there will be spoilers. So if anyone hasn't seen the films yet, or in case you don't mind spoilers, then that's fine. But otherwise, there will be dragons and spoilers in this conversation. But first, guys, what is Korean comedy? How do you perceive it? Who wants to go first?
Oh gosh.
Okay.
Heavy question.
Heavy.
Korean comedy, it's this roller coaster of emotions. It will make you shed tears with laughter, but you will also be ugly crying in no time. So it's fun, but at the same time it tackles all those deeper issues. It goes deeper than maybe comedies from other countries. That's what I think about Korean comedy. So you can have fun, but it's not just fun. There's more to it than that.
Yeah. I mean, that was a pretty great description, to be honest. I don't know how I could add more to that, except that oftentimes, when I think of comedies, I would think of something that will just make me laugh throughout. And obviously, yes, feeling emotions. But when I think of Korean comedy, it's usually a lot of heavy emotions. I usually walk away feeling and thinking a lot, especially about just the message the movie conveys. A lot of thinking. Yeah, just very thought-invoking, funny, but also usually quite sad.
I find comedies, as much as I've watched them, to be similar to how other genres are done in Korean film, and that often includes that the characters are really well developed and have really strong emotions, and social and other issues are always present. So it's not just about the one thing, but the comedies have the added benefit of making you laugh for a bit, just like horror has the benefit of making you scared for a bit. But at the end of the movie, you don't walk away with just that bit, but with a much larger experience.
And here I'd maybe like to add that there aren't many films in general that could be considered as pure comedies, but I don't think I've seen a film industry so intent and so good at combining melodrama with comedy. So it's because they could be considered as polar opposites, but somehow Korean films make the two together work. So it's a united front of feelings, in a way. So, and feelings are what Korean cinema is all about. Definitely. Yeah. So do we start with Welcome to Dongmagol? It's the first in our line of films. It is also the oldest, and it is the opening film of this year's Korean Film Week. Alex, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll just give the short introduction, just talk a bit about the film. So, as you know, it is set in the year 1950, so during the Korean War. And it begins with the American Navy pilot. His name is Smith. And he crashes his plane while flying over a remote part of the Korean peninsula. You know, you remember the storm of butterflies, which was really nice. And shortly after that, we're introduced to three North Korean soldiers. They're ambushed. They manage to escape. They barely survive. And afterwards, okay, so we have the American pilot, we have the three North Korean soldiers, and then we meet two South Korean soldiers. They presumably deserted their units, and all of them, they meet in Dongmagol, in that small village, that little oasis in the middle of the war raging in the peninsula, and there's peace, and they meet there, and of course it doesn't take long for them to clash, and the movie goes from there. And it kind of all starts with this cute little Mexican standoff between those soldiers, but the Navy soldier isn't part of the standoff. It's just North and South Korean soldiers. And the standoff ends with them accidentally blowing up the village storage. So maybe you can talk about that wonderful scene that follows after that, the iconic popcorn scene.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Definitely. But maybe first I wanted to hear what you guys thought about how did you perceive the village itself? Because to me, it's almost like a mythical place, especially because there's like a feeling of otherworldliness that the butterflies give the village. For example, at the entrance to the village, there is that whole line of statues that they sometimes light up at night. And it just generally feels like you're entering a different type of, a bit of a utopia in a way, almost. So what were your thoughts on the village itself?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
No problem. What you said, the mythical quality is certainly there, but at first I had you always tend to expect the unexpected in Korean films, so I sort of was hoping that it was a utopia and not like a midsummer scene where they would turn out to be a cult or something. And it's really serves as a really good symbol, as a metaphor for peace and prosperity in midst of the war, and saying basically we all got along, it could be this mythical place could be available to everyone. And I found that a really good message, and I really liked the way it was developed through that village.
Yeah. Actually, sorry,
no,
again,
interrupting. Go for it.
Actually, hearing you say that, it just makes me think of the Swing Kids message, being quite similar in that, if there wasn't all this sort of, I guess, conflict over ideology, there could be this peaceful place that is just removed from sort of all these almost, I guess, in a way, petty seeming arguments. Of course, they're not petty because, you know, people lost their lives over this, but at the same time, it's kind of almost a symbol of how they all could be if they just set their differences aside for, you know, a couple moments.
And I also think that maybe, especially in the moments where towards the end, when the American / Korean Allied forces arrive, you can really see that the reality of Korean War is that this is actually just one people, basically divided, and they are as much similar as they are different. And I think that this film, in a way, also, because from start to finish, we don't really know where Dongmakol is. Is it on the north side? Is it on the south side? So it could be either side, because and both of the groups of the soldiers can relate and they speak the same language. So, you know, it's basically that. It's like, in a way, in a no man's land, but what could have been. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, popcorn.
Yeah.
It's definitely a memorable scene. I will say that much. It's definitely one for the books. I don't think I've seen a scene like it in anything else.
It's got these magical vibes, I think. I don't think anyone, the first time watching this movie, could see this scene coming. You can't tell me otherwise. No one will see that coming.
Yeah.
And I think the what's adding to the scene is, of course, the music. Like we already discussed, the score by Joe Hisaishi, who's popular for his work on the Miyazaki movies, the Studio Ghibli, of course. And I don't think the popcorn scene would be the same without that score. It sets the tone so perfectly. It's phenomenal. The whole movie, actually. And it shows how the director, who's a huge fan of Joe Hisaishi, by the way, he had his music in mind when he wrote the movie. And he kind of structured the story while having this music, the music by this man, in mind. And he then contacted Joe Hisaishi and asked him, hey, maybe score my movie, please? And he did. And this is, okay, maybe his mail was probably a bit more polite than what I just said, but you get what I'm saying. And in that scene, it's like, it's snowing, but it's actually this cascade of popcorn just raining down on them, and it's awesome. And also at the end of the movie, where the bombs, let's call them bombs, dropping down on them, it wouldn't feel the same way without the score, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, it sets the tone. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it definitely drives home the impact that scene has, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the bomb one, sorry if that wasn't clear.
Yeah.
The popcorn also visually, I think it it functions as a bookend, because it looks kind of like it's snowing, and that's at that moment their time at the village begins for real, and when it starts snowing for real is when they have to leave. So it kind of is a visual bookend, and I always find such things really great. It's really film language well used.
Yeah.
Yeah. Telling a story visually rather than, spelling it out for you. It allows for sort of your own kind of reading between the lines, or even just interpretation of the scene. Yeah, definitely.
And speaking of visual, a miracle in cell number 7. Now this one. This is a film that should not function, but it does. So it's classified as a comedy, but it's also really not. It's one of the most tragic Korean films I've ever seen, but it also has some of the most funny moments and most heartwarming moments of any of the Korean films that I've ever seen. It's just, yeah, it shows that the like, even if you're standing on the edge of a knife, that perfect balance is possible. So and yeah, I'm doing the introduction for this one in a way. So basically it's a film about a father who is has a disability, intellectual disability, and is wrongfully accused and forced to admit to a gruesome crime, gets jailed, and in the process is separated from his adorable little daughter, and then while in jail manages to weave relationships, meaningful relationships with other prisoners, and even the warden, while they, more than even him, are trying to prove his innocence, and he's basically just focused on reuniting with his child. So this is actually based on a true story, but the ending of the true story is thankfully not as brutal. It was Jong Won-sop was accused of murdering 9-year-old daughter of a police chief when he was 38, went to prison, served 15 years, but then later on actually managed to get fully acquitted for his crime. So he survived and lived to tell the tale and managed to prove his innocence. So the actual story is a bit more uplifting, but the film really drives the message about capital punishment home, I think, because it ends the way it ends, right? What are your thoughts on this film? Is everyone okay after watching it?
Definitely not.
Not even close.
Yeah.
No, it definitely hits home hard. It's very emotionally difficult to watch, but it's also very heartwarming and wholesome in a lot of ways, and especially just, you know, the warden, for example, you know, he knows that he wasn't that Yonggu wasn't the assailant of the girl, and, you know, he kind of allows him to be able to meet with his daughter. He just, you know, is powerless to obviously change his sentence or anything, but, you know, he allows him that small bit of kindness. And I just think it's beautiful that there's sort of like a silver lining in this horrible situation, that there's at least some sort of hope, you know.
Plus the interaction between the group of prisoners that share the cell, this miracle cell number 7, with Yonggu. It's really comedy at its finest, I think, in a way. Just a group of hardened criminals, and then a little girl who, you know, overtapes and paints over their naked lady photos, and just it is perfection in itself.
Yeah.
The movie does a great job at humanizing the criminals, I think. So yeah,
and subtly bringing up themes like illiteracy, for example. So I think that's actually one of the great things about this film. In a way, there's so much going on, but it never goes overboard with it. Like the prison warden is dealing with a lot of grief. There's a whole story there that just like gets touched upon, but like in an amount that is like enough for us to know that there's a backstory, but it doesn't overwhelm the main story at the same time. So it's honestly just a really well-made film. Yeah.
Yes, I was thinking in my mind while I was watching it, I was comparing it to two other films about wrongly imprisoned criminals, which was Shawshank Redemption, of course, and In the Name of the Father. And basically, this one is so much broader. The focus isn't just on the false imprisonment, but on how this person is able to make, the hero is able to make everyone grow. He is the spark that brings the change everywhere, and of course his daughter even more so. But like you've said, Sanja, it just introduces issues left and right, but never loses the focus on the relationship with the daughter and how important that is. So it keeps you completely grounded while, it leaves you thinking about a bunch of other stuff, like truly a lot of issues. And, it completely breaks your heart in the end as well. So, yeah.
And again, driving that message home with everything possible. So, yeah. It's, I think, one of the few movies where I can say that I was laughing out loud and like 15 minutes later crying out loud. So definitely. It's been remade. This film has been remade with actually differences in endings, right? Alex?
Yeah.
Said, yeah.
Yeah, right. The movie has been remade in I don't know the order as the years the movie was remade. I just know it was Turkey, the Philippines. There's an Indian version, though it's uncredited, I think. So yeah, there's that, and there is a Spanish remake in the making right now. We don't know much about the cast or where the story is going to go, if there is. Sorry. If there's going to be another ending or not. But I'll just talk about the It was picked up by Netflix, so it's very, very popular internationally. And it actually got a higher rating than the South Korean one, which totally baffled me. I don't know about any other remake that has a higher rating than the original. I never heard of that. So that was a first for me. And the Turkish version is, it's less subtle. So there is more, let's call it police brutality. There's some torturing there. Let's give it a name. But the ending is different. Like you said, it's a bit more bittersweet. It's hard to say. It's just different, the ending. Let's just leave it at that. But what I can say about the movie, they did great with the localization. They put it in another time. They added some more characters, so it's not just focused on the prison, but there are characters outside of it. And there's a granny in there. So the father isn't alone in taking care of his child. There's the grandmother as well. Okay. Which also the granny isn't in the South Korean version. Another thing about the Korean version, it's probably a bit of a controversial opinion, but I can see where the police commissioner is coming from. He just lost his child and he wants to see someone punished, and he's blinded by that rage. And of course, we all know Yongwoo is innocent. We don't want to see him punished because the chemistry between those two, between Yongwoo and his daughter is just out there. It's amazing. But I felt for the police commissioner. I did, because he lost his child and he wants to see justice. Though what then actually happens to Yongwoo isn't justice. You know where I'm coming from, right? I'm not defending the...
No, I think it actually really importantly shows, because there's one father who lost a child and wasn't able to basically go past his own grief and just wanted to see someone punished no matter who it was. And then we have another father who lost his child, but this one does in fact gather his senses and eventually works to uncover the truth. So I think there's some sort of a win for humanity there, like understanding there's both kinds of people in the system. There's people who might cause the innocent to suffer, but also there are the ones that will try and help, even if sometimes they are not successful. So I think some of the hope in this film actually is derived from the prison warden and his change of heart, if you will. So, but yeah, speaking of remakes, I'm just happy there's no American remake on the line. So
not yet, anyway.
They are those, not yet, but yeah, those are notoriously bad. So, and speaking of Americans, in Korea, Swing Kids. Kids. Yes.
I mean, it's not to be confused with another film of the same name that is a completely different story with to do with Nazis and you know, their love for jazz. It's how do I put this? It's a misleading movie, I would say personally, because you do not expect the darkness that it goes into later along the line, sort of like halfway through the film. Basically, the premise is there's a sort of Korean war camp, a prisoner of war camp on Koje Island, or Kojedo as it's called in the movie, and it's kind of introduced to us through sort of like one of those classic Second World War sort of propaganda reels, which is also called propaganda, as we kind of get into the opening scene of the sort of camp, I guess, director. How would you call him? Director, leader?
General? Yeah,
sorry. I was missing the word there. But yeah, I mean, it just so reminiscent of that. And it moves on into sort of this discussion of the general with his sort of fellow soldiers, or under sorry, missing the word there again. You know, the soldiers working under him, I guess.
Yeah.
Guards of the prison, essentially. And so the big conflict is basically that there's the sort of North Korean soldiers, and then South Korean soldiers, who are conflicted over ideology, meaning there's an anti-communist and a communist side. And basically this conflict has just gotten very violent recently, and a lot of sort of attention was shed on that. And so the general is under a lot of pressure to make the prison camp look good. And so to do that, obviously there's several things, but one of the things he does is he tasks an African-American soldier, Jackson, with creating a dance troupe, with soldiers from this camp, with prisoners from this camp, to sort of, portray sort of a unity and sort of a harmony there that obviously isn't actually there, but for the press it needs to be there. And we see how we get gradually introduced to the characters as Jackson does auditions for which is the great scene, the audition scene that I love, because we get introduced after all the soldiers kind of fail the audition. We get introduced to first the South Korean prisoner who is falsely imprisoned, who does like a Korean traditional dance, which is completely different from the style of dance that the dance troupe is aiming for, which I haven't mentioned is tap dancing. And it's incredibly difficult and complex, and Jackson kind of prefaces this with the comment that he doesn't think that Asians are able or even going to be good at tap dancing, like in this weird parallel, the general comments on his like lack of open-mindedness. But basically we're introduced to the next character in sort of directly after the audition scene, who is Xiao Fang, is that right? Yeah. Or Pang, I'm not sure, sorry, I'm really bad with names. But he is just this amazing, expressive dancer, and he just bursts in there, and they just stand there in silence, Jackson and the interpreter, as he just busts out this amazing dancing routine. And obviously nothing like tap dancing, but it's so expressive and so fluid, and it's just a wonderful scene to watch. It's so joyful. And it's just, just wonderful when then the interpreter, who is a young Korean woman called Yalle, she kind of is the only person who actually speaks English in the camp, and she's kind of the only line between Jackson and these soldiers. And then we finally come across Kisu, who is kind of, I guess you could say in a way, the main character of the movie, who is a sort of the younger brother of a North Korean war hero, I guess. Is it right to say war hero when the war isn't over yet? I don't know.
I think they call him that in the movie as well.
Yeah, he does.
He's hailed as a war hero. Yeah.
Basically, he has a lot of pressure on him to fulfill that same role of his older brother, to, continue on that sort of, I guess, brutal, ruthless mindset of, the Yankees kind of don't belong here, and that is overshadowed completely by his love for tap dance. And it appears sort of almost instantaneously as soon as he sees Jackson doing tap dance routine for the first time, and he just becomes so obsessed with it that it's like everywhere he goes, everything he sees becomes a rhythm, becomes something he wants to dance to. And it's so sort of hopeful and joyful. He's found something that could maybe break him free of this kind of, cage of living up to his older brother's image, and it's kind of so hopeful. And then the story goes on and we get to the moment where, you know, everything kind of goes wrong, and, you know, the what was it, Kwanguk was the name, right? He comes back from, I guess it must have been a war, from the war, with severed limbs. I don't know, we're not told explicitly where he came back from, right?
No, I don't think so. No, he just sort of, he's just in the ongoing line of incomers from the war lines, basically.
Yeah, well, basically upon his return, kind of the tone of the movie completely changes, because he comes there and he completely reinvigorates that hatred, you know, that hatred towards sort of the Yankees and non-communists, specifically the Yankees. I say Yankees a lot because that is the word used in the movie, to clarify. And he basically lectures all these North Korean soldiers kept at the camp for being too passive. Where is their drive? Where is their hatred? Where have they forgotten what these soldiers have done to their home? He basically reignites that hatred,
the rebellion, right?
And creates a rebellion, and, you know, it gets really violent, and in the process, Jackson also even then gets you know, caught with sort of anti-American flyers just trying to get tap dance shoes for Kisu. And so after that, it kind of just becomes a bit of a roller coaster, because it's like, will they be able to still have the dance troupe? Because now the passion is there, the love for dancing is there, but now the situation isn't as friendly. And the reality
sort of barged in.
The
reality of the fact that this is in fact happening during a war, right? So
exactly.
But yeah, you mentioned that Kisu is sort of the central character, and that's actually, true, because this is based on a musical that is called Ro Kisu. The original is named after him, so he's definitely the central character of the story. But Alex, I think the musical itself is based on something else, right?
Yep. The musical itself is based on photographs by a guy from Switzerland. His name was Werner Bischoff, and he took all those nice photographs of the camp during the Korean War. And there are actually photos of, I'm sure you remember the scenes where the prisoners danced the mask dance, the Talchom. And there are real life pictures of that dance, and I think the movie did great in portraying those pictures, in bringing them back to life, so to say. It's nice how on the one side there's tap dance, and on the other side there's the Korean mask dance. I think it's very nice to put both of those in the movie. It's like this very nice balance between rhythm, right?
Rhythm, they share rhythm. Like there's in a way, there's like two dances that are so rich in history, but the rhythm is what they have in common. So definitely, that's the red line connecting the two, I guess. And speaking of the rhythm, Do Kyung-soo has it.
So absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it really needs to be pointed out that he gives an amazing performance. So, especially because idol actors can go either way, but he continuously proves that he is just super talented as an actor, and also just in all musical ways. I think one of you mentioned in the past that he trained for a very long time, right? But at the same time, not that long.
5 months actually.
Yeah, you mentioned 5 months.
Yeah, before production, and those 5 months together with his probably busy idol schedule, I don't see him having a lot of time to practice, honestly. But like we discussed before, he is probably that type of perfectionist who can achieve the actual perfection and not just try.
Yeah, it's just, it makes you want to get up and do some tap dancing yourself. So that's definitely, both the rhythm and the movement are like inviting. So
yeah, he definitely conveys the passion of the character for dancing very well.
Yeah, he really does.
I'd just like to say that the dance scenes are amazing. I mean, the way that's performed and shot is really, really good to watch. And very often with such elaborate choreographies, that's difficult to film and edit. And here you can see like every detail that went into the choreography. You can see it on screen. You can feel it. It makes you want to dance, basically. And that was really the most amazing part of the film for me. I mean, the story is really good and everything, but the dancing is just amazing.
Yeah, especially the scene with the masked dance that they did, because they're struggling to dance in this really muddy field, and obviously it goes horribly wrong and not at all to plan, but it's an absolute hit, because obviously, you know, it looks almost like a planned comedy routine to these people that are watching, these soldiers and these reporters, and it's just so, I don't know, it's so hilarious, and at the same time you feel so many things watching that scene. Just, they're dancing their hearts out, and they're just like, okay, if we fail, it doesn't matter anymore, we tried our best, you know.
I loved it.
It's so great, and they absolutely loved it, you know. It's an absolute smash hit, and they're like, when can we see more, you know? And it's like, it saves Jackson pretty much, because Jackson kind of gets to come back and put together the troupe again. So
yeah.
If I may add, actually while watching it, I had a flashback to another movie from the 80s, I think. It was called White Nights, and it starred Mikhail Baryshnikov and I think Gregory Hines, where the Baryshnikov is like a Russian, he actually plays a Russian ballet dancer who escaped from the country, but then is on a plane that crashes in Russia and is imprisoned, and they have there he befriends an American who I think is working for Russians, and it's played by Gregory Hines, and then they tap dance, basically. Gregory Hines is a really good tap dancer. So there's a lot of dancing and imprisonment and political intrigue, just as it's here, but there is no comedy in that.
No, it takes a Korean film, I think, to put comedy into a prisoner of war camp. So in a way. And speaking of hardcore topics, the final film in the selection, the newest one, is I Can Speak. So how about that one?
Yes. It was actually my favorite film of the lot, because it starts out really as like this typical story where you see like old lady who's like sort of bitter, and she's like putting complaints to the civil office all the time, and then you see a young guy who's a bit uptight, and together they, you know, when they crash they become friends, and you think you got this figured out. You've seen that type of movie played out. They're gonna become friends, they're gonna become better people. he's teaching her English. She's learning to make fewer complaints and be nicer to people. But then it basically flips the book on you. It introduces the reason why she needs to learn English. And at first it tells you that just so she could get to speak to her brother who's moved to the States when he was younger, and you're okay with that. But then it lets out the real reason, and the fact is that this old lady, Daho Lee, was a so-called comfort woman, basically a sex slave during World War II to the Japanese invading forces, and she needs to learn English so that she can testify in the U.S. Congress in order to convince Americans to demand that the Japanese issue an apology. And at that moment, through the flashback, it goes to the camp, and it becomes this basically a horror movie about things that happened, and it, you know, rips your heart out and then continues to wring it throughout the whole process that she has to go through while testifying. And it really ends up bringing the characters closer and making you feel all sorts of feels. So it's really very well structured to get that response from you. And while you are aware, you can be aware that the movie has just manipulated you, you can also see that it needed to do so, and that this way really gets the message through much better through. And again, it's not just a single message. The comfort women message is, of course, paramount, but there's also the redevelopment gangsters who are trying to gentrify the market where she works. There's also how civil service responds to people, how it should be more of a service to the people than what it generally is, and you know, the attitude people have to seniors, and you know, everything else there.
And on top of all of that, it's a true story, based on a true story by an activist, Yong-soo, who actually testified in front of the Congress and was the one who sent the mills spinning in the process. So this is not just a very well structured story. This is, a lot of it is what happened. Not all of it, but a lot of it is what happened. It's about an actual person, and it's about an actual painful topic in the history of Korea. Not just Korea, but also other, China and the Philippines, and because women from different countries were actually taken in to become comfort women for the Japanese soldiers, right? And it's a very painful chapter in the history, and this film really manages to punch you in the stomach in a way, with with things that actually happened. So yeah, and also the scenes where Ok-bun testifies in front of the Congress were actually taped in the Congress in Richmond, Virginia. So there is also that level of reality to this film. What did you think, Alex, watching it?
I was just thinking about the scene where Ok-bun is sitting in front of her mother's grave, because it took a while for comfort women to come forward to talk about what had happened to them during the war. And in that scene, I think that's the first scene of the movie that really broke my heart and had me wailing, because as she's talking to her mother, asking her why, basically why, and why the mother never asked her, did it hurt? What happened to you? All these things she had to just live with all of her life. And adding to that scene is the one at the market where Okbun meets her friend, her longtime friend, and the friend just bursts into tears and feels sorry for Okbun because she had to endure all that by herself when she was alone. And Okbun was just scared of what her friend now thought of her, but instead the friend wanted to help. She wanted to be there for Okbun. And those two scenes, I had to stop the movie for a while to gather myself to stop crying and then go for the rest of it.
No, it's really just the whole message of comfort women having two burdens: what happened and then silence. Silence was another curse they had to suffer for the longest time. So continue.
No, you're right. I was building up to that silence and to the title of the movie, actually, because I can speak. She tells the Congress, yes, I can speak. And by that, she kind of breaks the silence. She was silent for 60 years, I think. And by finally breaking that silence, she finds her voice again. And it's just, yes, she can speak and she will speak about what happened to her. And it's a very impressive scene. And with Minje then coming to her aid, asking her how she is, that line, how are you, Okbun? It will never mean the same to me. And her, I am fine. It's very emotional. I'm getting a bit teary here. So,
yeah. I mean, it's understandable that you're getting teary. It is a very powerful scene.
It is
emotionally very powerful, and it's just it makes you glad that she had at least someone to support her there, because she was so overwhelmed when she was put on the spot to speak, and she had that little bit of a push that she needed when she saw Minje in the audience, and just that little sort of pillar of support was all she needed. And just that she didn't get enough support sooner is kind of the tragedy of the situation, because she was unable to share the atrocities of what she'd been through, and it really hits home hard.
Yeah, it really does. But I think still this one actually ends on a higher note than most of the other ones, because of the fact that the community comes together. She is perceived differently. The stigma that kept her silent is in a way gone. Like, it's empowering her now. So I think that's a very important message, and the best possible way to end this story.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we don't just end on a very heavy note. What movies would you suggest the viewers to follow up this for Korean Film Week with? What other comedies have you watched and have impressed you? Who wants to go first? Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I think you should go first. You've got the longest list.
What? No, I just picked two of them. To be fair,
it was just a little joke. Sorry.
So yeah, it was hard for me to decide what to recommend, but in the end I chose 200 Pounds Beauty from 2006. It's based on a Japanese manga. And it's a musical romance comedy, and it's very funny, it's very lighthearted, it's definitely mainstream comedy, but as it is with Korean comedies, it tackles issues of beauty standards, talks about weight, and more or less self-worth, finding that self-love. It's a very nice, entertaining movie. You should definitely watch that if you have the chance. And another one, it's a bit newer. It's from 2016, and it also stars Daho, so I had to stick with that. And Park Shin-hye as well, who we see in Miracle in Cell Number 7. Yeah. And it's called Hyung, or My Annoying Brother. And there's this brother dynamic again, just like in Swing Kids. So you see what I did there?
Yeah.
Put some elements together. And in that movie, we see how the relationship between the brothers develop. Of course, there is more. And this one will make you cry again, but I think in a good way. I totally recommend that one. Yeah.
Igor, want to go next?
Yes. Before, when we were talking, I mentioned that while watching these movies, I realized that I have not seen all that many Korean comedies, but mostly watched thrillers, dramas, and horror movies and sci-fi. But I do remember one particular film, which is Singles from 2003. That's the English title, and it's about three roommates, two women and a guy, and they sort of have like relationships, and it's about being young and coming into the world. But there's this really interesting twist where the two of the roommates, the guy and one of the girls, have sleep together, and then she gets pregnant, but she doesn't tell him, and instead chooses to raise the child with her roommate as friends. And that's basically a very progressive attitude, and you don't really find that in sort of romance movies. And I really like that. And also it has that nice feeling of young people falling in love, falling out of love. It's really quite well made.
As for me, I'm kind of like you, Igor. I'm not too familiar with a lot of Korean comedies, but there's one that I watched I would say 2 years ago that really stuck with me. It took a while for me to remember it because obviously 2 years is a while. You watch a lot of stuff in between, but it's called Jailbreakers, or I think the Korean title is 광복절 특사. I might have butchered the pronunciation there, but because I don't have the Hangul in front of me right now, so yeah, apologies. But basically the premise is two prison inmates escape their prison only to enter into society, and they read in the newspaper that their names are among those who will be released on a special amnesty for the Korean National Liberation Day. And so they have to get back, the warden of the prison basically says if they get back into the prison, if they manage to get back into the prison in time without being noticed or an alarm being raised, they'll be set free along with, you know, the special amnesty as planned. And it's just, the premise alone just tells you how hilarious this is going to be, because it is, as the description says, it's beautiful. Hilarity ensues as they attempt to, you know, get back into prison. Yeah. And I don't think it's like any other comedy I've ever seen. It genuinely had me just laughing to bits when I watched it. So yeah, that one a definite recommend. And the other recommendation I had is kind of less so a sort of pure comedy and not a film but a series, which a lot of people might already know, or because it's on Netflix, is Psychodziman Kentana, which means I think the English title is It's Okay Not to Be Okay. And it's basically just this wonderful story about a children's book writer who is very cold and closed off from people, and she's kind of very got sort of, at least on surface level, traits of a psychopath, or a sociopath maybe would be a better description. And she meets two siblings, a younger brother and an older brother, Kangtae and Sangtae, I think they're called. And Sangtae is the older brother, and he is I think on the sort of now I can't think of the word. He basically has a psychological impairment. We're not exactly told what or what his condition is in like official diagnosis terms, but basically his younger brother takes care of him and has taken care of him all of his life, and the writer kind of gets to open up more, and as a result of meeting them, through their complicated, multifaceted, warm-hearted relationship. The two brothers really bring out the humanity in her, and they can reconnect her with her emotions. And it is hilarious and sad, and in a way almost sort of like a horror movie in some respects. But it is beautiful to watch, and I highly recommend anyone who loves Korean movies and dramas, please watch it. It's amazing. But yeah,
great.
Those are my recommendations.
Thank you. Mine, I have two. They are dark. Yes, because if we can combine, because if Korean comedies can be combined with melodrama, why not combine them with, say, thriller? And so here there's a film called A Hard Day, and it's about a corrupt cop who just has the worst day ever. Everything goes wrong. And this film is a film where you will laugh out loud at the shenanigans that happen to him, but at the same time you're going to be sitting at the edge of your seat just because of the tension that is also present the entire time. And actually the lead actor, Lee Sung-kyun, you might recognize from Parasite and a bunch of K-dramas and K-films. And the other one is the funniest zombie movie I've ever seen. And it is everything a zombie movie should have, which is, it's gruesome, it's scary, but also just so genuinely funny. And that's The Odd Family Zombie for Sale. And it's about a family who lives in the countryside. They basically also they sort of exist on the other side of the law. And out of nowhere, a zombie shows up, and it turns out that if he bites, and like the countryside is full of single older men, and it turns out that if the zombie bites them, they get a bit of their stamina back, right? So they start selling the bites of the zombie to help the men of the countryside regain their youth in a way. But then, of course, the movie takes a very, very dark turn. But like, even in the middle of everything, there are still moments when you're just like laughing so hard it hurts. So it's definitely an experience that I would recommend. So we have actually reached the end of our convo. I want to thank all of you for being here, and I want to thank anyone who has been listening and watching and made it all the way to the end. And I hope that we get to do this next year in person. So
Me too.
everyone, yeah, stay healthy, stay safe, and watch Korean cinema. So bye.
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 And cut. So okay.
Okay. Stop
Right?
recording.